based in the UK. Her research focuses on the history of art and technology, and recently Francesca has published her book on the history of early computer art and its pioneers. And Sarag Pailian is originally from Lebanon. She's right now in Beirut. She's interested in different ways of experiencing, absorbing, and learning art and its relation to the mind. And with some sense and some nonsense, she experiments bringing different ingredients together. Francesca and Sarag, thank you so much for joining our session today. We have these two keywords, which is sound and distance. And I'm just going to give you a word for exploring however you wish to combine them. Who wants to start?
Well, to me, it's amazing that, well, I don't know how you, well, hi everyone, and thank you for having me here. I don't know how you assigned these two words, if it was random or thought about, but to me, sound and distance are pretty close, both for my private life and my my job. so I like to discuss them, and it's going to be interesting to see what we come up with. I don't know. As you said, I'm originally from Italy, but I've been living in the UK for almost 20 years. So distance is definitely physical distance, but also as an art historian and as a curator, I also see distance probably more metaphorically. Like, for instance, history. I see history as a distance, as a subject of my research. So I tend to ask myself, how can I get closer to the past and to events that I like to understand? And because my job as a curator and as an art historian is about using oral histories and interviewing the pioneers of computer art, sound is a really, really important element. So when you told me that the two keywords were sound and distance, I said, okay, that's me. So thank you for that.
That's really nice. I like how you keep talking about the distance in more like the form to getting closer, right? And I think it's really, sometimes I personally feel like having the word distance means having something long, something far away, but usually it could be a short distance, right? So when you're just like in front of you. Sarag?
Well, hello, everyone. Also, I am very excited to be here. For me, when I saw the two words together, the first thing that came to my mind, it was as if like I saw them as a bundle that came together. And I remembered the first thing I thought about was the city, actually, Beirut. Beirut is so saturated, and there's like all sorts of sounds wherever you are. I mean, if you are at home or if you are on the street, if you're wearing your earphones or if you are in your car, you know. So I mean, it is nice to depict the distances of these sounds because they're multi-layered, you know. So the first thing I thought about was actually this. I saw myself in the city, saturated by all these sounds, seeing like checking all the distances, how far each sound is in regard of me, like as a first thing. But yeah, like they're both also like you know, I can say like sound and distance as if something that can be physical or something that can as Francesca mentioned, something that is more abstract. Even sound for me, it can be something that is not physical but is like experienced, bodily experience, more like.
Yeah, what I like about this is the fact that both sound and distance, I mean, they are both in a way evocative. They can evoke a memory or a place or an experience. And I mean, they're both abstract because we can't see them. But at the same time, they're very tangible. They're very real. And I was very, very fascinated by the 4 projects that you guys put together in the online exhibition that is connected to this talk, because most of them were connected to sound in a very, very real way, very tangible, very, very connected to a place, to a memory. So I think that's something that evokes nostalgia in a way, if that makes any sense. Is that something that you consider in your work, and that is connected to sound and distance?
I mean, yeah, I do relate to this term nostalgia, because I mean, a sound very much like a smell, for example, can take you back in history, in your own past, which you were talking about, like in art history, in the distant history of the. So it can also be in that sense that one could be physically more tangible and taking you to the more abstract sense, or the other, like for example, the vice versa could be as valid, I think. Yeah. Also, I think like the way we experience sound, like as frequency, let's say, like really physically, just how far it is and how close it is, like it completely, how our ear is receiving it, it completely differs, with distance and with pitch, of course, but something that is so close to your ear, you have completely different experiences than something that is getting further and further away. And sometimes, I don't know, it happens to me, you can call me crazy, but I hear things that are not there, so I mean, this is also a question mark, like, is this sound really like, just before you fall asleep, sometimes you're closing your eyes and you're going into sleep, and then you hear something, and then you're wondering, like, was that my name? Is there anyone calling me here? Like, so I don't know. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I like how you both framing this notions, like in terms of like experience, and like maybe this phenomenological aspect of experiencing the sound and the distance, and like hearing something. And I also think that it's for me, it's been so interesting since we all have been quarantined. There is so many more sound that I started discovering since I'm being at the home all the time, and the city sounds so totally different. So there is like this another layer opening up.
Yeah.
Like how is it for you, like in the UK and like in Lebanon? Like what are those layers that for you personally you feel like they're less distance now?
Well, it's amazing that during this pandemic, sound and distance made such a big role in making us feeling closer, so to speak, to our friends and to our family. I was really, really touched when I basically spent the first part of the lockdown in Venice when it started there at the beginning of March, and then I moved to Cambridge for the second part of my lockdown. And I was really, really touched when I started seeing those videos of people in Italy singing folklore or like traditional songs from their balconies to feel closer and to in a way find a way to shorten the distance socially. And I mean, it's something that then I could see happening in the States or here in the UK. And just the idea that you can feel closer to someone by listening to their sounds, or the idea of singing together on the balcony at a time where you are not allowed to touch anyone or to be close to anyone. That was really, really touching, and it told me the how important it is, what these two elements are.
Yeah, I do agree with Francesca. It's like, yes, right now as humans we are all supposed to be a bit distant from each other, and we shouldn't hug, and we shouldn't see each other, and we shouldn't touch each other, and all of these restrictions. And then what we have is like the sounds. We're connecting to the sounds. We're spending more time at home, and there are sounds that I've been hearing that I've never had, like I had never heard before. Like, for example, I know a woman's voice very, very vividly, and because also I am, I don't necessarily like, I'm not necessarily very much pleased by the sound or not. It's not about that, but it's as if like, I can hear her now. I know I'm not very sure where she is, but I know like she's now cooking. Oh, now she's talking to her. You know, we're connecting in different ways. I don't know what the woman looks like. Another thing is like, I think everyone, I've been hearing it a lot, but there's a lot of birds, and like because of maybe lack of cars, maybe less cars, so more birds, I guess. And distant or not, at any hour, and I mean at 9 p.m. I hear birds in Beirut. I mean, this is not very common. So so really we're connecting with the sounds. And also, you know, like when you're alone at home, I've been spending quite a bit of time alone, which I've been liking really, but I am more in silence inside, indoors, and more connected to the sounds outside. And I talk to my cat sometimes, and then, you know, there's this sudden interference of like, okay, the silence has been broken, and there has been a conversation, you know. Yeah.
It's also one of the comments that we got here just right now. You mentioned that the silence has been broken, and one of our here people in the chat says, to me personally, the first connection to this topic is the sound of silence. It's like distance that is always silent. So
Yeah.
this two modes like of sound and being silent, like be soundless. Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's like sound and silence. They both can be also, you know, like an internal thing. Maybe you have your internal silence, even though you know you are in a certain specific chaos, and all you can hear is the sound of your own silence. Or it is a really silent place, and what you hear is the silence. Or you can be in a silent place, yet you can be listening to your own chaos inside your head. So it depends, I guess, like how we're looking at this sound of silence. Because just I was saying the silence was broken, I realized that there was no complete silence, really, because I was just talking about the sounds that I was hearing in the city. And the reason, and the mere fact that I actually said something, it means that internally, even inside my head, I wasn't really silent, you know. Yeah.
I think that during this time of the world pandemic, silence has helped us to amplify all the sounds that surround us. So that's one of the things that I noticed.
Yeah, that's true. More space for more sounds basically appeared. There is also another interesting thought. The first I thought of is the concept of retrieving sounds from ultrasound, where a beam of projected ultrasound can be demodulated, so only a specific recipient can hear it. So far, it has mainly been used at theme parks, etc. But are there any everyday use you can think of?
That's a really tough question.
Yeah.
I would love to see it applied in art, like with creativity. That would be something that would interest me a lot. But I don't know how that applies to everyday life. What is that for you, Sarah?
Right. As if I'm wondering, like, okay, if we were able to restrict the recipient of the sound, I don't know. I can't help but think of the technicalities of this, you know. because like having control over it, you know, it's a bit okay. So now we know there are certain frequencies that are heard by certain animals or certain like age groups, etc. But yeah, I keep getting stuck in the technicality of like how do we control this, and how do we decide what to make whom listen to, you know?
I just keep thinking of the image of the bat that screams just to get the distance from the cave, what it is. That's the, I have this image in mind since you asked that question.
Okay, I'm trying to also follow here the path in the chat. It's like has been really like some total different discussion here about another directed personal sound that is also interesting but less practical in everyday use. It's both transmitter and receiver, maybe a rather bulky parabola. Complete silence is allegedly very unsettling. That is the way to make a very personal art experience where no two people really never can be sure they experience the same work. Yeah, of course, because like the silence is like not one concept as far as I understand, right? So we always can tackle it like from different angles. Mm-hmm. Maybe something else could be related to sound, only silence that can also make, I think pretty much all the sounds, right? Because it's such a personal, as we also can see from this discussion, like because there are so many layers how you can approach this discussion. So it's always a select.
To be honest, I like to see sound more like as a link. I mean, you were talking about hypertext with Najam and Sebastian in an earlier session. So I tend to see sound as a link that connects me to past experiences or to different places, to different memories.
A carrier of memory.
Yeah. So that's my main. That's how I associate sound.
And in the same way, maybe under the same umbrella, maybe with that, I mean, it gets you closer to a memory, or more repellent towards a memory, creating more of a distance, for example. Or for example, if it is a sound that you're not necessarily enjoying, or for example, if it is a clash of two sounds that you are not able to grasp really well, it pushes you away. Maybe it creates a distance between you and the sound that you are perceiving, or the sounds that you are perceiving.
Like this emotional distance, like you just will not go with it.
Yeah.
Also, we have a question here. Distance can also be measured in time. Are there sounds you feel have been lost to modernity that you want to retrieve for nostalgia or other reasons?
To be honest, as I was saying before, as part of my job when I interview artists, which are usually pioneers of computer art, they are. I used to travel a lot to interview them. So what I like the most when I listen to these interviews is actually the sounds that I hear in their studios, in their atelier. Sometimes they start to activate machines that existed before I was born. So those are the sounds that I like to listen to when I basically write the history of that period. That is a set of sounds that are missing from my daily life.
Yeah, like you become immersed into that environment that was like, I don't know, several decades before, right? And for those people, it was like totally normal surrounding.
Yeah.
But for us, it's like only can be heard like in special places, like when you say you go to some personal, I don't know, to their homes or places where they have worked or they exhibited those works. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I find that really also very intriguing also. Like I kept thinking of these different devices, you know, the how we used to take video, for example, or like the old telephones or the cassette tapes and everything, like how really everything did sound a bit different. It's quite intriguing, and a million other things that right now, like that maybe I have never even heard about. I mean, that existed way before I did, like before we did, or what.
I think in a way, I was thinking about media art and technology applied to sound and distance. And I don't know, probably it is a way, I mean, technology as a tool is a way to bring us closer to both sound and distance. We're probably able to measure them more rationally and maybe to understand them. So it's quite interesting, this this connection between sound and distance in media art.
Sometimes, like now I'm thinking, sometimes sounds it themselves sound distant, and then sounds that you have like shorter, more restricted sounds that are like just closer, you'd feel. For example, one of the sounds I thought about was like when the internet just got to Beirut, we would log in, and we would have these like, you know, these like, you know, of course, when you're connecting to the, and you know, this for me, it's like, whoa, something is connecting to something else that is so distant, you know. So I guess also it's the nature of the sound. Whereas if something is like abrupt and small, you know, you feel like, oh, it's really in close proximity with me.
Really beautiful comments. Thank you. Thank you, Francesca. I also really like how you mentioned the media art context, like how the technology is really becoming a great tool and maybe like more of a method for us to experience the sound and distance. And I feel like this discussion has been approaching so many different ways how to talk about the sound and distance. And I think we're wrapped up with time. But if you want to add something, Sarag and Francesca.
I'm probably going to think of this after the call, actually. I'm probably just going to be in my head. I am so happy to have sat with you too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarag. Francesca?
Same for me. Same for me. I really enjoyed this conversation, and there is so much to think about. Various ways of seeing these two words connected, and one big missing element in this in these words is probably our eye, the fact that we can't see them. So I think there's a lot to think about. So I'll be happy to talk about more.
Sounds really good. Thank you so much. It was a really nice discussion. I totally enjoyed that. Have a great day and stay safe there, both you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you. Bye.